There's two things that happened to you in Santa Monica. You either got well known for something or you died. That was it.
Just opening up a magazine and seeing just a photo of Natas and him just completely standing out.
I remember being pretty fascinated with the guy, just everything about him, you know, his name and the fact that he was 100% street.
If I had to say what his skating style was, I would just say it was like strictly brute.
Back then, skateboarding was very different, and you didn't really strive to be a pro skateboarder. You just did what you did, and things kind of fell into place.
They start going on the streets and doing rails. I mean, come on, quit it. It's destroying property, it's hurting, but they were so enthusiastic and you couldn't stop, how shall I say. The skateboarding just started, and of course we bought the boards, and Natas would ride it ever since he walked, so to speak.
Natas grew up in South Santa Monica, California, in the area known as Dogtown. During his early childhood in the 70s, Dogtown became famous for its good waves and aggressive locals who were pushing the limits of what was possible in the water, as well as on any paved terrain they could find. Surfing and skating were practically a given for anyone in the community, and Natas was no exception. But by the time he was old enough to gain recognition in the neighborhood, the Dogtown hype had died down, and skateboarding was in a lull.
You know, the Dogtown thing had passed over, it was kind of over with, so everybody was like doing drugs and surfing. It was kind of a rough neighborhood.
The drug scene was huge, and they have seen all kinds of things on the pier, as you know. So I was concerned, but I wasn't overly worried.
One of the cooler things was that we kept an eye on the younger guys, because we knew there was a lot of bad shit that could happen to them. So he got to focus on his skateboarding, because we wouldn't let him do anything else. His surfing and skateboarding were what he did.
In 1983, Natas placed first in a local surf contest and received as a prize an SMA skateboard. Santa Monica Airlines was operated out of the back of a surf shop as a part-time hobby of Dogtown pioneer Skip Engblom. Natas was so impressed with the board that he decided to pay Skip a visit.
And one day this little kid comes skating up to the back door of the surfboard factory where I'm at, and he goes, "I'm Natas, and I want to be on your skateboard team." I started laughing because I don't really have a skateboard team. I just make these things customs. And so I went, "Let me see you skate." So he just kind of pushed. I did this one ollie, and I went, "That's it, man. I go, come here." I go, "You are the skateboard team."
Although Natas now officially had a sponsor, he and Skip remained largely under the radar of the skateboard industry. But Natas was making quite a name for himself in Santa Monica, using a new approach that involved only his local street environment.
I didn't go to pools and ramps and skate parks that much. There was a couple of little banks by the house, but it's mostly like the curbs in front of my house and benches.
You'd see him at the beach every fucking day, trying shit. And that's what Skipper loved about him.
You know, they were tearing it up like surfing kind of style on anything, you know. And it wasn't just that they needed banks anymore or a pool or something. I mean, it was a whole different kind of skating.
I remember the day that Natas actually decided that he could ride walls.
Everybody did this thing where they would run up to walls and throw their skate on it and kind of ride on the wall. And that was kind of the state of things, you know what I mean? And then one day, he's not using his hand. So he's skating right up to the fucking wall, and bang, he's up on the wall. And he hangs up there and he skates off. It's like, motherfucking little bastard, you know? You see that? Unbelievable.
Natas soon caught the eye of Dogtown media wizard Craig Stesick, who photographed him on a wall in Venice and sent the pictures to Thrasher magazine. Natas had never even owned a Thrasher at the time, let alone been published in it, but they were so impressed with the photo that they decided to put him on the cover.
And there's sidewalk, and then there's wall, and then there's this guy. And we're going, yeah, all right, he's on the wall. How did you draw him in there? I mean, come on, we know collage when we see it. Oh no, the guys really do this. And it was like, no way.
You just looked at it and you realized that his internal gyroscope was so different than anybody else's.
I think he made it more three-dimensional, you know, street skating.
As Natas acquired more coverage in the magazines, the more progressive skaters of the time also took notice.
The first time I seen him was in the magazine, and he had big bar striped shorts on, and he's all aimed to pivot on the bumper of a car.
And that was just like, what? How the hell did he get up there?
Isolated in his own environment, his skating was out of sync with the trends of the sport in the early to mid-'80s.
Mostly the magazines had vertical skating. The guys we liked a lot were like Billy Ruff. On vertical, Billy Ruff was like completely smooth. So when we would skate quarter pipes or any transition, we were trying to be smooth like Ruff. When we went to the quarter pipe, we saw Natas there. And like when he came up to the quarter pipe, went up to the top, banged it, like hit it right off the top of the thing, and we're like, whoa. Because, you know, his style is more from surfing. When he's out skating, like he's going down the line like as if he was surfing, like one constant rather than going to a spot and doing tricks.
When we'd leave his house to go skating, it was never like, well, we're just gonna roll down to the beach. It was right into tricks. It was like, as soon as he left the house, put the board down, it was like, boom, the board was flipping. Boom, that was up the curb. Down the street, grinding up the curb, cut off, dodge around a couple cars, ollie over another curb, you know, down to the beach, slappy a curb, up, grind the bench, you know, it's like, I should be falling. I'm like, damn.
Natas began skating regularly with Julian Stranger, who also lived in Santa Monica, and would meet up with Mark Gonzalez, one of the few established street skaters of the time.
So I never was that clued into like the whole skateboard culture. Like I'd do stuff and then I'd meet with Mark and he'd actually tell me what it was called.
I think Natas could do whatever he wanted to do. Like, it's just what he chose to do. My favorite trick to this day is a Wally. I think he invented that one, for sure.
We'd get together every couple of weeks and he'd see what the other guy was doing. And like, we'd be like, oh, like, never thought of that. I was doing this.
Mark and Natas' frequent sessions began serving as a drawing board for what was next in skateboarding, as they pushed each other to new levels of skill and creativity. One of the many important innovations to come out of their meetings was the transfer of Rodney Mullen's ollie kickflip from freestyle to street.
Mark, he was the one that showed me that, and he couldn't do them either. And he was like, look, you go out, you ollie, and then you kick it, and it was just so funny, spending the whole day landing with 1 foot on, 1 foot off, like, and then finally get it. It took forever. And we got together the next month or two later, and we were both doing them out of driveways and catching them in the air and that sort of thing.
After Natas got his own model on Santa Monica Airlines, his growing reputation began translating into board sales. It became a problem around 1986 when the fledgling SMA couldn't keep up with demand. At age 16, Natas surprised everyone by taking matters into his own hands and arranging a manufacturing and distribution deal between Skip and the much larger Santa Cruz Skateboards.
He actually did the deal for me. You know, the Santa Cruz wanted to sell boards with his name on it. They had to be SMA boards, and that I was part of the equation, and there was just no going back. That was one of the great things about dealing with him, is that at 15 or 16, he was way brighter than I ever would be.
Now that SMA was part of Santa Cruz, the opportunity arose to do some filming. Natas' breakthrough first video part in Santa Cruz's Wheels of Fire finally gave everyone a chance to see him skate, and even hear his voice.
This is me, going down the street. Oh, dirt.
His ability to ollie at that time had far surpassed anyone else, and the part as a whole helped cement the new direction in which skateboarding was heading.
frontside 360 ollie 17 years ago was ridiculous.
Everything in Wheels of Fire, the ollie, when he ollied the can.
You just see something, you'd be like, Natas could ollie that. Natas could jump that. He could definitely jump that. That impact affected everybody skateboarding at that time.
He was doing stuff that a lot of people wouldn't think of doing. Sliding dumpsters when, you know, back in the day that was huge. It was like, what? Natas did this?
Santa Cruz released Wheels of Fire in 1987, expecting its vert superstars, Rob Roskop and Christian Asoy, to create most of the hype. But as street skating began overtaking vert, Natas' strong video part surprised everyone by generating the most response.
And people were complaining, like, oh, he's just a street skater and his board's selling that many. It was like a bizarro world compared to now.
But as Natas was becoming a household name, Santa Cruz began getting calls from parents concerned over its spelling, backwards.
Natas Kaupas. What? What kind of name is that?
Natas' family and his name come from Lithuania. Natas is simply the male version of Natalia, a common Lithuanian name.
My parents named me that without really thinking what it spelled backwards. People think it's got some big meaning behind it.
Ignoring the logical explanation, many schools and shops instituted a ban on any merchandise bearing the name Natas. Even whole cities joined in, most notably Long Beach, California.
It was only about 5 years ago that they lifted that ban.
Despite the bans, kids couldn't get enough of Natas, and his name was everywhere. But fame often became a nuisance for the somewhat reserved skater, as he was constantly hounded by fans.
He wasn't so much about the fame, so when kids would approach him, he kind of was like, hey, I'm just skating, leave me alone. I think kids would trip.
If someone wanted to talk to me, yeah, we'd sit and talk, but I wouldn't want to sign autographs, I just wanted to skateboard, and that's what I like to do.
Although he had growing responsibilities running SMA, Natas was able to fit in plenty of skateboarding. He and Mark Gonzalez continued to influence and push each other as they created the building blocks for modern skating. The next big challenge for the two leaders was something most street skaters hadn't even dreamt of at the time.
It was a Pro-Am contest down in Oceanside, and we see Natas ride across the stage and try and board slide down this hand railing. He didn't make it, but we couldn't believe it. We hadn't heard about this. We had never seen this. We had no idea that anyone even thought like this. We all just stopped dead in our tracks and went, oh my God.
Mark and I were like almost the only people who could talk that language. You'd go skating with other people and they're like, you're kind of more showing everyone else what you're doing. We were doing rail slides on higher and higher things. Like the natural thing was to take it to handrail.
I would say the Federal Building was like the first legitimate handrail that we both did.
He was a spur of the moment type of individual who would just like, there it is, try it, you know. He was always sort of one step ahead of all of us.
Soon after he and the Gons did the first recorded board slides, Natas stepped up again at the Federal Building rail.
They were the first guys that I ever saw do a 50-50 on a rail.
It's like soft aluminum, those rails are. I think I had copers on too.
Breaking the handrail barrier would change skateboarding forever, as other skaters endlessly repeated and built upon the work of Natas and Gons. But Natas also became known for certain tricks that no one has ever managed to duplicate.
I don't know. I still think it was smoke and mirrors, man. I don't know what was going on. But
I've tried that forever. Never be able to do it.
While filming for his next Santa Cruz video part, Natas found a new way to incorporate the fire hydrant into skateboarding.
Natas could twirl around on a fire hydrant.
That's the greatest contribution to skateboarding, I think.
Really, that's how he skated. He utilized everything around him, and he had moves for everything.
Natas' next video part, in Santa Cruz's Streets on Fire, had become a much anticipated event, and once again defined the level of street skating at the time.
Captain, there are doubts regarding your ability to lead them. The men lead them. There are doubts in your ability. There's too many blinds in your analogy. Lieutenant, there is talk pertaining interpretation of problems. Describe them. Problems. There are doubts in your ability. There's too many blanks in your analogies.
When I really got into Natas was watching those videos, and it was everything, Natas. I had to be Natas to everything.
Trying to just emulate every single thing, like, trying to get the haircut. Like, everyone was doing like the Tony Hawk haircut. We were trying to do the Natas haircut. That was what was so amazing about it, just that someone could spark that.
Natas' unique take on skateboarding, as well as fashion and even music, began getting him attention worldwide. He got a call one day from a French shoe designer who had seen Natas' interview in Thrasher and wanted to start a company.
He tracked me down and threw this whole thing at me. And he's this crazy French guy, but he was a great guy and I liked his ideas. And so we started Etnies.
Natas' shoe, the first pro model skateboard shoe, was released in 1988. Having a skate shoe tested and approved by a top pro was a totally new concept, but it would set a precedent and become the standard in the industry for years to come. Natas already had a good idea of how he wanted it to feel, but creating the look of the shoe, as well as its advertising campaign, was a completely new experience for him.
It planted a seed, like, someone's got to think of that. Someone's got to think of every last thing and think about what it does when you see all these things. That's trying to figure it all out, I guess.
Natas brought his new skills and ideas to SMA, where he began laying out ads, designing graphics, and even managing the team.
We weren't skating the same way skating had been going on for years, so it made sense to kind of back that up with some artwork and just kind of get the whole attitude across.
The way I always saw it was Natas kind of ran Santa Monica Airlines, and it was gnarly. He'd go down to him and he'd take care of you and kind of tell you, here's what you're going to get for your board sales.
At the time, Natas had more influence on SMA than almost any other pro did over their sponsor. Realizing they could basically do whatever they wanted, Natas and Jim Thiebaud decided to do a U.S. tour by driving across country in a couple of used Cadillacs they bought. Enthusiastic to do things their own way, they planned 30 demos in 40 days across America. In their excitement, they'd also overlooked many of the logistical problems in planning the tour.
The first Cadillac blew up in Vegas. We bought a stolen Cadillac.
We couldn't get hotel rooms. We'd have to stay in the most ghetto hotel rooms because no one was over 21.
The tour also included Julian Stranger, Mickey Reyes, and Alan Peterson. While in New York, they also discovered an amazing young powerhouse named Sean Sheffy, who joined the tour and would later ride for SMA. Although a bit disorganized, the Cadillac Tour was a success and touched the lives of many up-and-coming skateboarders.
And at a demo, we're rail sliding this box. And Gino Iannucci is one of the kids holding up that box.
Despite all the excitement Natas and the team had generated on tour, they returned home to find that the 80s skateboarding boom had begun to fade. Undeterred, Natas continued to push SMA and himself to new levels. By the early 90s, skateboarding had followed the U.S. economy into a full-blown recession, and the companies that managed to survive were cutting way back. Natas began to feel that the effort he was putting into SMA wasn't quite paying off. At the same time, his friend and fellow pro skater, Steve Rocco, had just started World Industries. It was based on the ideal of keeping skateboarding creative and fun, and was completely run by skaters.
Now it's normal for skaters to run a company, but at the time it was some guys.
Seeing what Natas had achieved with SMA, Rocco offered him his own brand under World Industries with complete creative control.
For some reason, we just thought 101 Dalmatians was a great idea to name a company, just to kind of not be so serious about it. I think at the time we went to go register the name. We're like, maybe it's not such a good idea. Like, let's just call it 101 or 101.
Over the next few years, 101 would become an incubator for Natas' artistic direction, as well as some of skateboarding's greatest talents. In 1992, Natas was finally at the helm of his own company and was still skating strong and was poised to establish 101 as a major brand. But a single injury would soon change all that.
The definite turning point was breaking my ankle, and I had to get an operation and got a plate put in.
You know, when we heard he broke his ankle and how bad it was devastating. It was just the way skating is too, you know. You cannot take it for granted.
You have a hard injury like that, getting older, it's hard to rebound.
I was up for like a few months, not skating, and at that time I bought a computer. It was a Mac 2 FX, top of the line, with a color monitor, a scanner, and a printer, and the whole thing was like 20 grand. And I just sat around drinking coffee and learning how to use it.
With a new creative outlet, Natas found himself redirecting his energy from skateboarding to design work. He sought opportunities to test his ideas and was soon invited to work on a new magazine being launched by World Industries.
Natas worked on the very first Big Brother. The first thing we worked on together was this Adam McNatt piece, and it was just this really sort of arty photo essay, and he laid the whole thing out. It was really great. He had these great sketchbooks. You know, we would sometimes just scan those in for backgrounds. And I don't know, he's constantly doing art.
His hands-on experience with 101 and Big Brother was an education in itself. But Natas' life in art began much earlier. Growing up in an artistic and eclectic community, his parents filled the house inside and out with sculpture, photography, and paintings. He was also influenced by local Santa Monica artists Wes Humpston and Kevin Ansell.
You know, he would want to draw, so we would help him draw. We'd show him stuff. And
he used to love to come over to my garage where I used to live behind my folks' house. I used to do like stuff on boards for people.
Of course, it had all the great skulls and crosses and lightning bolts and wings. So that was great. Yeah, as a kid, I was fascinated by it.
Wesley was the original Dogtown skateboard guy, and he kind of passed it on to me. And then I kind of passed it on to Natas.
But Natas' influences weren't confined to the borders of Dogtown. With an early foundation in art and a keen interest in learning, he began to investigate other aspects of design.
Natas asked real questions and try to learn and absorb things.
Mofo was the first to tell me what art direction was. He used to work on the ads for Santa Monica Airlines. And so I really got an understanding of, as he was molding my image, basically, and the company's image. It got me really thinking, this is how everyone sees us because of him. And so I was like, okay, art direction.
As his workload increased at World Industries, he slowly drifted away from 101 as Rocco's company became less fun and more corporate.
What started as more of a friendship thing and he was looking out for me became more of a business. It was just number crunching, kind of crunched it right out.
While he still worked within the confines of World Industries, Natas felt the need to test himself in the real world outside of skateboarding. His way out came in the form of a phone call from the offices of Larry Flint Publications.
They scouted him out. They saw the layouts in Blunt, and they needed an art director for a new porn mag they were doing. It was called Rage. They had all these ideas about Rage, where it was going to be sort of more like Playboy. You know, it wasn't going to be so sleazy. But right away, Larry Flint gave up on the idea of it being this artfully done, tasteful porn magazine. So he just wanted it to be all raw with like girls like, so all of a sudden, Natas is laying out this like gnarly hardcore porn. I don't think he liked that too much. I don't know. I thought it was funny.
After his experience art directing magazines, in 1998, Natas returned to the skateboard industry and helped to establish the short-lived Vita Shoes, a company that was co-founded by longtime friend Mark Oblo.
He just basically created our images with the logos and with the ads, and I think our ads were at that time a lot different than anyone else's ads. They were just sketchy handwriting and taped on type things, and he basically put it all together, and so that was all him.
Soon after Vita, Natas was doing design work for Quicksilver and Element, companies that also tapped into his iconic status by putting him on their skateboard teams.
Natas could draw, Natas could paint, Natas could take photos. And I guess that's kind of when I saw him putting it all together. And I mean, he took over and he made a major influence on probably the biggest company in our industry.
He's really added something to the brand and the influence that he's had on product and loosening things up and just his energy and the way he is. I'm really excited just from here on out to see what comes.
In 2001, Quicksilver promoted Natas to the position of creative director alongside graphics guru David Carson.
To start the full circle that just happened, he laid out a cover of me in Transworld. He's got amazing talent, a really good teacher, and now I get to work with him.
Despite his many responsibilities, Natas still finds time to work on a project he helped found in the year 2000. Since our very first issue, he's been the hand behind On's signature script and illustration style. currently focusing on his art and design work. Natas is fully healed and still skates and surfs for the pure joy of it.
Just Natas, he's like all of our best friends, and it was just like the weirdest evolution of watching somebody who had so much natural talent, like in the water, as an artist, on a skateboard. He was just so fluid and knew how to move.
Despite the occasional tour and demo, he manages to avoid the pressures associated with a pro career. Recognizing all his contributions to skateboarding, in 1998, Element released the Natas Kaupas Pro model, and Etnies is also set to re-release his original pro shoe in 2003.
And I made it clear, Natas, you will have a board on Element. As long as you exist, you don't have to step on a skateboard ever again, because that's not the point. The point is that you stepped on one a long time ago, and when you did, it changed the sport, the industry, forever.
He was the pioneers, the godfathers of street skating that started it all and made it possible.
He didn't really follow what was the trend or what was cool. He kind of just marched to the beat of his own drum.
He has a reason for doing the things he does, and then people copy what he does.
He's just got the same thing like Gons. He's just got it. He doesn't have to really do anything but just roll on his board, and you're like, he's got it.
In the end, magazines and videos, they'll be forgotten, but it's the true heroes and icons and legends like Natas and Gons that are going to endure. Those guys' names will go on forever.